welcomed people who wanted to come and either in secret fight for this country, and one of the most noteworthy was a slave who was given as a laborer to General George Washington's staff, who spoke English, he spoke French, he was literate. His name was George Amistad. The Marquis de Lafayette and him became very close friends, and the Marquis infiltrated him as a spy into the camp of the British commanding general in Yorktown. So an African American working with a French immigrant created one of the first penetration operations that George Washington had that ended that war. Funny little fact, when I go to Paris and I go to Versailles, which is the great palace that they have there, they have a hall called the Hall of Battles. And at the Hall of Battles, they have the picture of General Burgoyne accepting the surrender of the British commander. And George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and others are all set off to the side. It's rather funny how they've attributed themselves this great victory. But in that painting is Amistad Lafayette, the African-American spy who worked for the Marquis de Lafayette. There were other immigrants that came to this country who put on America's flag to fight for this country. Tadeusz Kościuszko of Poland. Every time I go to Poland, you can see his statue everywhere. He was a revolutionary general in their own country. We have army facilities named after him in this country. General von Steuben, who came to this country, he wasn't even a general. He was like a lieutenant in the Prussian army. But he transformed Washington's army at Valley Forge, transformed it from what we call MWRs, men with rifles, into a combat force that defeated the British on Christmas morning in the Battle of Trenton, where they overran the Hessians after crossing at Valley Forge, and then went on to the Battle of Princeton and beat the British at the Battle of Princeton, and then went on to the Battle of Monmouth and beat the British at the Battle of Monmouth. It could not have been done the previous summer without that discipline. And a Polish citizen came here, became an American, and fought under the American flag. In the Civil War, as many as 25% of all Union members of our Army, of the United States Army, were first-generation immigrants who joined the Army. We have a long tradition of working together under other flags. When I joined the International Legion in Ukraine, I left. Those of you who might recall, at that time, I was working for MSNBC. I was the chief terrorism and intelligence analyst and earning a relatively good six-figure salary, which I quit because when I went to Ukraine and I saw a nation that was fighting for America's values of freedom, democracy, and they were the underdog in a war where they were outgunned 10-1. It was like being given a chance to fight in the American Revolution. I saw people that were more American than some Americans. I saw people that loved America because of our mere presence on this planet. I took part in a combat operation in Kharkiv in September of 2022, the largest counteroffensive against the Russians since World War II. I went into a little village, and for those who don't believe it, my 61st birthday, I was carrying an M14 designated marksman rifle with a thermal imager and 40 pounds of gear. And I go into a village, a very small village outside the city of Kupiansk, which they gave us 1 week to take. That city fell in 72 hours. That's how hard we hit the Russians. And the International Legion's reconnaissance force was the spear tip of that operation. My battalion commander was Ukrainian, my team commander was a Polish Special Forces officer, and the funniest guy I ever served with was British. Because he loved tea. He was like a literal walking, talking caricature of what a British guy was. We took our objectives 2 hours because we were fighting for the people behind us that needed us, that relied on us. I went into this village and I wore this exact uniform you're wearing. This uniform I wore for over a year, better part of a year. Little old lady comes out. Let me tell you something about wars. No matter how destroyed a village is, no matter how leveled the place is, no matter how much artillery is pounding it, we roll into this village, we're searching door to door in case the Russians are there, and what happens? Happens in every village. A little old lady in her 80s comes out looking for her cat. What did we stop to do? We stopped our combat operations to look for the cat. And she came over to me and she saw my patch. And she said, America, America, and she caressed my patch. And that's when I knew we were doing something good. She didn't see Ukrainian army soldiers. Yeah, they're everywhere. But she found the legionnaires who were wearing Polish army patches, French. We had French foreign legionnaires, British. Even we had Japanese and Taiwanese. We all were there not because it was bombs, guns, and exciting noises. No, it was horrible. World War II level lethal environment. None of you, maybe some who have been in maybe Kherson or some place where you were bombarded. I had an artillery bombardment that lasted 3 days non-stop. It got so bad we started playing games with the impacts. We were taking bets. But it was until that woman touched me, I knew that America was a symbol for her of freedom and liberation and finding her cat. And you can tell a lot about a country, the way they take care of pets. Which leads me to my last funny story. So I'm sitting in this, we're patrolling about 3 kilometers behind Russian lines in the city of eastern Kupiansk. We crossed the Oskil River, where the Russians had shot every civilian that had tried to make their way over to the side of freedom. 8 people were lying dead in the middle of it, men and women, older, most of them elderly. And that offended me. But we went about our mission. And during the mission, I was at a small crossroads laying inside a bush. And Russian artillery started coming over, Russian rockets. And it's true, if you can hear the rocket, it's not for you, right? Go over your head. Whoosh! And then it explodes about 100, 200 meters off in the distance, you know, towards where the civilians are. Because they like to shell civilians. And I'm laying there with my M14 across my lap. I'm on my radio with my other squad members. And then all of a sudden, I see a black object in front of me. And in 3 bounds, it was 1, 2, I drop my rifle and I catch a dog. A big black dog. So you guys know we're supposed to keep everybody appraised of what's happening, right? So what do? I get on my radio, I go, this is Sinbad, I have a dog. Just so that I could hear everybody call back and go, what did you just say? I had a dog. And the funny thing is, it was so shocking, I took my phone out and took a picture of us laying in this bush. And that dog followed us for 3 days, and it's now our battalion mascot. We know we're going to have to find the owner eventually and give it back. All the dogs in Ukraine are tagged. But the people we were opposing, the people we were fighting, shoot dogs. I don't know what's wrong with them. But I do know this, for every one of you who has ever served in the Cold War, against the Russians, everything you ever thought about them was true. Everything you ever thought. Drunks, I couldn't possibly imagine the amount of alcohol, bottles that we found. We actually saw a 21-foot long by 5-foot wide by 3 feet tall stack of alcohol bottles in one of their compounds. Disregard for human life, they disregarded their own lives. And when I left Ukraine, I knew this. I was fighting for our values and upholding American values around the world the way that others who fought for similar values did. Eugene Bullard, 17-year-old kid from Georgia, in 1914 joins the French Foreign Legion in Paris. African American, serves for 4 years on the front line of Verdun and is wounded 3 times in the service of France. But he always believed he was an American first. He became the first American fighter pilot flying an aircraft in World War I. He's now formally honored as the first African American pilot. But he didn't fly for the United States first because we wouldn't let him because of the color of his skin. But he still believed in America and its values. We have had many Americans fight overseas for other countries. World War II, the Eagle Squadron, which is U.S. Army pilots, that went to Britain and flew Spitfires in the Battle of Britain. Their little British patches were like a joke that was designed to allow American pilots to get experience in a war that was coming. And if you don't believe me, believe Ben Affleck, because towards the end of Pearl Harbor, that's where he was right before the end of the movie. So you can go get a little history lesson watching that movie, that he was in the Eagle Squadron. Or those who went to China and flew in the Flying Tigers. We've had many people fight in other uniforms. But I've always, always, always brought my values from Hudson, New York to the fight. I have a guy named Kay, crazy kid, 22 years old, American from New Jersey. I just went to Europe to medevac him to Landstuhl Army Hospital, where he has a shattered shin, shattered, like someone took glass and broke it. And he doesn't want to lose his leg. And then we brought him to Rotterdam in the Netherlands, where the NATO hospital there could take care of him. So I'm proud to wear the uniform I wore, dragged around, washed about 500 times. I gave away 6 sets of uniforms, so this is the cleanest one I got. But you will never see me ever lose this patch of the American flag, ever. I take those values with me wherever I go. Every person here who has served has those values inscribed on their heart till their last dying day. And with that, I bought a little gift for being invited here. And I bought this gift, which is from a Ukrainian battalion that's been signed by its team members. This is being given to the VFW. This flag was removed from a Hamas fighter who was killed slaughtering a village of elderly people. And they're all elderly at those kibbutzes. I mean, when I stepped into it, I brought the median age down to 85. you need to understand that this country stands for the little guy. We stand for what's right. And when I got there and I saw how they were wiped out in one day, I understood that we need to stand up for our values, no matter where they are. Because if you don't, China will be in Taiwan, we'll be fighting with our own soldiers. Russia will win in Ukraine, they'll go after Poland, NATO, which means some of you who are 12, 15 years old may be fighting in a broader European war because we lost our compass of what this day stood for. We did not have men die on D-Day and Iwo Jima to forget what they died for. Defending America's values. Yes, sometimes we took land. Yes, sometimes we did an island. But you actually fought for what's here. The guts in your heart. And the Ukrainians, they got guts. They're going to be teaching in our war colleges for years because they're fighting for the people they love behind them, not for the man in front of them that is invaded and that they hate.